Today is Leap Day, which, as you know, comes once every 4 years. In politics, the nation is witnessing something that comes around basically never. A sitting president and a former president, both in Texas, at the U.S. Mexico border to talk about immigration policy, past, present, and future. Now, these two rivals are heading toward a 2024 rematch. So the general election campaign overshadows everything going on today. And typically in politics, there is a compare and contrast. And usually that compare and contrast hurts one side, benefits the other. But both candidates, President Biden in Brownsville, Texas, former President Trump in Eagle Pass, Texas, are inviting the nation to compare and contrast their records over what this has become an immigration debate driving straight toward the 2024 campaign. And that is where we begin. And we shall begin with the words of both of these political combatants. First President Biden, then former President Trump.
Folks, it's real simple. It's time to act. It's long past time to act. I just received a briefing from the Border Patrol at the border, as well as Immigration and Enforcement, asylum officers, and they're all doing incredible work under really tough conditions. Really tough conditions. They told me what you already know and we already know. They desperately need more resources.
This is a Biden invasion over the past 3 years. I call him Crooked Joe because he's crooked. He's a terrible president, the worst president our country's ever had, probably the most incompetent president we've ever had. But it's allowing thousands and thousands of people to come in.
CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoya-Galvez joins us now from Eagle Pass, Texas, where former President Trump was. Camilo, you live with this issue day in and day out. Chronicle the day, chronicle the compare and contrast, the numbers and the politics, if you'd be so kind.
Major, in case it wasn't clear before, immigration is now front and center in the 2024 election. President Biden and former President Donald Trump both visited the Texas border today to essentially blame each other, Major, for the country's seemingly intractable and vexing immigration challenges and the crises here at the U.S. Mexico border that have bedeviled Republican and Democratic administrations over the past 3 decades. Congress, as you know, has remained desperately gridlocked on this issue since the 1990s. In Brownsville today, the president said that he reached an agreement with a group of bipartisan senators in Congress, but the Republicans rejected that compromise because of political reasons. He said that that agreement would have allowed Border Patrol agents here to effectively shut down asylum processing during spikes in illegal immigration and alleviate conditions here in Eagle Pass. Former President Donald Trump said that President Biden is directly at fault for the record levels of illegal crossings here over the past 3 years. He also cited recent examples of immigrants living in the country illegally, committing very serious crimes, including the murder of that Georgia nursing student. And so both the former president and the current president are trying to highlight that they are taking the offensive on this issue. Former President Donald Trump, as you know, Major, believes that this is a winning issue for him and that it could help him propel him back into the White House. And polls do indicate, Major, that it is now the #1 concern among American voters.
Camilo, help us out with some of the underlying facts here. The Republican National Committee put out a very lengthy research document to buttress former President Trump's remarks at Eagle Pass today, saying, among other things, there were executive actions that President Trump took that President Biden rescinded, which allowed more migrants to come, stay in the United States longer. And he basically de-emphasized, according to this Republican National Committee research document, deportation and moving people out of the United States simply on the basis of their immigration status. How much of that is accurate?
Well, look, Major, multiple things are true. It is true that President Biden has the authority to reinstate the Trump-era border policies, including the Remain in Mexico program that he reversed early on during his time as president. That is true. The president could do that right now through his executive action. But it is also true, Major, that President Biden does not have the unilateral authority to just suspend asylum law that was passed by Congress and that currently allows anyone who sets foot here on American soil after crossing the Rio Grande or crossing the desert in Arizona and California to request asylum. That is a right that is enshrined under U.S. law and that can only be changed by Congress. And that bipartisan agreement in the Senate, Major, would have done just that. It would allow the president to suspend that legal obligation that the U.S. has to screen people for protection during spikes in illegal migration. And so former President Donald Trump is right that the number of illegal crossings have never been this high, but the Biden administration, unbeknownst to a lot of people, has also carried out a record number of deportations.
Camilo, you not only study the facts and the policies, you also study the issues underlying migration and migration flows. I've been reading this week several stories talking about the U.S. economy. There are 9.5 million job vacancies in America, 6.5 million unemployed Americans. And many of these articles say that the magnetism of the U.S. job market is one of the main incentives to bring people to the American border, crossing it in hopes of landing a job. And it is quite clear statistically that migrants, legal and illegal, have been filling those jobs. How much of that informs or ought to inform this overall debate?
Well, Major, we typically describe migration patterns by looking at so-called pull and push factors. The push factors are the conditions in home countries that push people to come to the U.S. For example, in Venezuela, the economy there has collapsed, and there is an authoritarian regime that is repressive and oppresses many of its citizens. And 7 million people have left that country over the past 3 years. Many of them are coming here to the U.S. border. But you also have the pull factors that attract people. One of them is that the asylum system is massively backlogged and cannot properly and quickly adjudicate who has a valid claim and who does not and who deserves to be deported. That attracts migration because people are able to stay here, Major, for an indefinite period of time. But there's also a major pull factor, and that is the relatively strength of the U.S. economy during the pandemic. We have recovered economically much more higher and to a higher degree than other countries, and that is attracting a lot of workers and people who want to have a better economic future for their families.
Camilo, right before I let you go, one more question. There was developments today, courts deciding something regarding a clash between Texas and its border policies and the federal government. Can you catch us up on that, please?
Major, this is a major ruling. A judge in Austin, Texas, has now blocked the SB 4 immigration law that Texas Governor Greg Abbott has signed in December. That would have allowed state troopers and other local law enforcement to jail, arrest, and prosecute migrants suspected of crossing into Texas illegally from Mexico. That is already a federal crime, but that law would have criminalized the action at the state level, allowing the state to issue de facto deportation orders to instruct migrants to go back to Mexico. The judge said that that is a federal responsibility, that federal immigration enforcement is a federal responsibility. Right now, that law was set to take effect on Tuesday, but it is now blocked until the appeals process plays out.
Camilo Montoya-Galvez in Eagle Pass, Texas, thank you very, very much. CBS News White House reporter Bo Erickson joins us now from Olmito, Texas, which is very near Brownsville. He was there while President Biden received a briefing from Customs and Border Patrol and other related agencies. Bo, your assessment of what the president heard and saw.
Yeah, hi, Major. We're about 10 miles north from that physical border fence between Brownsville, Texas, and Matamoros, Mexico. And that is where the president started off just before he came to deliver this speech. And kind of talking about both of these stops from both President Biden and former President Donald Trump, there was quite the split screen image, I noticed, of how both the White House and the campaign of Mr. Trump are trying to kind of zhuzh up and rev up some of their base with these stops. When President Biden was at the border, he was talking to Border Patrol agents in front of ATVs and kind of four-wheeler type vehicles. When former President Trump was at the border about 300 miles away, he was in front of Humvees and National Guards individuals in fatigues. They are trying to project some type of framing there about how serious of a situation is going on here at the border. And then a very interesting moment that I thought here at the station, this is the Brownsville Patrol Station, about 10 miles north of the border, is that President Biden, he has been under hear some criticism if he acknowledges the issues at the border here. Well, the briefing today that the president received from top officials of many of the agencies at the Department of Homeland Security, it was in public. It was in front of about 100 people, and we all watched the briefing too. And we watched the president react to what his own federal government was saying was going on. We heard that there are thousands and thousands of pounds of drugs coming over the border. One asylum officer talked about the difficulties that she has and how much she has to work every week, working overtime to try to process the backlog of asylum claims that take years and years. And the president said that hopefully they will try to get the resources through that bipartisan negotiated border security bill that some people may remember just came out about a few weeks ago. However, it did not pass because what the president said today, House Republicans are trying to play politics with this. And today in his speech here at the border station, the president was talking about how we need to put politics aside and try to solve these issues that are happening down here in Texas, Arizona, and California as well.
Bo, presidential events with public briefings like that rarely result in surprises for any president. There was no surprise for President Biden. He was told that they need more resources. He came to the border to emphasize the point that he is asking Congress for more resources. He will do so again, undoubtedly, next Thursday at the State of the Union address. But it is worth pointing out that everyone the president talked to did say you can change things to executive policy, but unless there's more people power and resources, they're still going to struggle. Did I hear that correctly from them?
Yeah, this seems to be a personnel issue at the forefront here. And what that actually means is funding that needs to come from Congress. And so the president really today, he didn't really try to lash out at former President Trump, but tried to invite him in, only mentioning him one time, saying, let's pass the bill, because he knows it's the toughest border security bill that many people have seen in decades.
Bo Erickson, thank you so very much.